Hi, and welcome back to Growth by Design, brought to you by RX2 Solutions, because growth doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. I'm Rob Graham.
And I'm Ross Rosner.
And in today's show, we're going to talk about how small businesses can leverage vendor partnerships to really propel them to the next level. And the key with it is maintaining oversight, alignment, and quality. So I guess the first question, Ross, is why outsource, right? Why partner with an organization to do what a lot of people consider a core function of their business?
Yeah, I think of it almost the easiest way to think of it for me is, are you going to make something or are you going to buy it? It's the same reason if I want a cold one, I'm going to go down to the corner store and I'm going to buy a 6-pack rather than try to set up a whole brewing operation in my basement, where the last time I did that, the first and only time I did that, I ended up making something other than beer. I didn't go blind, obviously, but like it wasn't beer and it didn't taste like beer and it was a disaster. I'm the type of person that takes the instructions and throws them away and just tries to figure it out. And for this, I just did not figure it out. Are you going to work hard, make your money, and then trust Anheuser-Busch or Molson Coors to make your beer, or are you going to go brew it in your basement? And people don't think of it like that, but that's essentially the decision you're making. A lot of what I've read on business strategy says figure out what your core competency actually is and focus only on that, and everything else let someone else do. It's the same reason why people hire nannies or send their kids to daycare. The same reason why some very wealthy people have private chefs and cleaning people. It's because it's worth your time to be doing something else and outsourcing stuff that you're not as good at or you don't get as much energy from to other people. Now, some people, like I have people come and we don't own a lawnmower. We have landscapers that come to our house and do that. Some of my neighbors just love cutting their own lawn. They get energy from it. They love being outside and they go and they do it. So it's really kind of balancing both those things. It's like, what are you really good at? What's the best use of your time? And what do you get energy from versus losing energy from?
Sure, that makes sense. But let's dive into this a little bit deeper. So from the time consumption, right, makes perfect sense. You know, you're not doing it, somebody else is doing it. But let's talk about from a skill set perspective and making beer, okay?
Yeah.
You tried making beer once. It didn't turn out too well. And then you stopped. So you invested the time, the energy, the money into buying the equipment to make beer, right? And then it came out poorly. And then you went down and bought beer.
I bought beer at the same time as the kid because I knew there was a pretty good chance it wasn't going to work out.
That's the point of it is you bought beer preemptively knowing that your beer was going to come out poorly.
Probably.
And that you still wanted to have something to drink.
I
or
did.
You wanted to have some beer to drink while you're making the beer.
Right.
Regardless, it makes sense. But let's take that over to the business standpoint now. So at RX2 Solutions, we could do our own accounting work. Right. But neither one of us has the knowledge of all the tax laws, where to file what. And on top of that, we don't want that knowledge because you only have so much space in your brain for things that you can do. So as a business owner and using the, outsource controller, CPA firm, whatever you want to call that, that's a huge time savings to us. Because I don't want to learn how to do that. You don't want to learn how to do it because it's going to take us away from our core competency. It's going to distract us. And when small businesses, even medium-sized businesses to a certain extent, try and take on too much internally, what they end up doing is putting out a mediocre product. And that's across the whole company. It's not just across one specific task of that organization. So now you're looking at it, and let's say you're a recruiting firm, an outsourced HR company like us, but your leaders are now focused on accounting and finance, and they're focused on maybe it's a marketing strategy is a big pain point for you. Maybe building business processes, things of that nature, payroll. Again, that's tied back in accounting and finance, but those things are coming up. Or you're making a product, and now as a business owner, you're also doing inventory counts. Like, not that you shouldn't be there, But there's ways to offload that area of expertise.
The biggest company example I can think of is GE in the early 2000s, where it was just maybe 50 companies that were bolted together with no common theme. The only common theme was that they were GE. They had nuclear power plants and they had railroad stuff and they had appliances and all these things that didn't really naturally fit together at all. It's just they had acquired, and they even owned Universal and they sold it to Comcast, I think. They owned a bunch of just random stuff and there was nothing cohesive about any of it. And that's why they went from the behemoth they were in the 80s and 90s to where they are now. I mean, now they've offloaded a bunch of those businesses and now they're in a much better position. What ends up happening when you try to do too much is you become GE. Then you look at a company and, you know, I have no opinion of this company one way or the other, but you look at an Amazon, their core competency is logistics. They've built out a logistics network that is second to none. And that's what they do. They get things from point A to point B very quickly, and that's why people use them. You need something delivered later today, go to Amazon. They have it in one of their warehouses. They'll get it to you. They might send it on a drone, a truck. They might have a third-party person in a car drive up to your house, and you're wondering, who is that at my door? And then it's your Amazon package. You're like, okay, cool. But that's what they do, and that's all they do. And they started as college books and then retrofitted that to everything that they do, versus a G that just took a bunch of businesses that seemed like a good idea, try to put them under one umbrella saying this is going to be successful, and it just fell apart.
In the small business, portion of this, let's take this and look at it from departmental duties. A lot of people are out there saying that outsourcing is bad, partnering with vendors bad, you need to keep it in-house, or that market's shrinking and things like that. There's something to be said from outside ideas. We'll continuously talk in terms of finance because that's probably one of the largest outsourced things and regulated pieces out there. But how many companies come in and have Deloitte, KPMG, EY do their audits? There's a reason why they have to. And it has nothing to do with that internally your team's poor. You just need an outside firm doing your financial audits. You should have an outside firm looking at your HR audits or your IT audits and things of that nature to help you with that. Make sure that A, your folks that are employed by you are doing it right. And then B, they're constantly doing the day in, day out, lights on, growth forecasting, strategic part of your business. They're not necessarily looking at what other organizations are doing. They're not going to have that insight on how to make you more efficient and streamline your business for growth, let alone their day-to-day duty. Another area that gets a bad rap when you talk about outsourcing or partnering is loss of control. And I think that in some cases that's true, that organizations can get kind of taken over by these outsourced firms or partners. But if you manage that relationship properly, you're going to have a lot of control over it, and then you'll end up with an increased amount of quality work that's being done. Just some statistics here. It was saying that roughly 60% of the outsourcing scenarios were ended by the client because they were dissatisfied with the work that the outsourced firm was doing. But then further breaking that down, it was mismanagement by the client and that they weren't setting the internal expectations correctly with the audit team. Now, on the flip side of it is that the organizations who partner with the right audit firm to embody that corporate culture that aligns with the company mission, they've seen a substantially higher success rate, where it's almost the opposite. It's like a 70% success rate of people who actually enjoy it versus a 60% of people who don't. So when you're going through your vendor selection, partner selection, whatever you want to call it, do your due diligence, not just on, hey, can RX2 Solutions accomplish the task, but does RX2 Solutions embody or align with the vision and culture of my organization? Because that's a big piece of it. having those employees work with that vendor to accomplish a similar goal. When we've worked with other organizations to help them across the board.
We love being able to tell the story of a company and getting a candidate excited in the opportunity. An organization with a strong culture makes our job easier there, and it allows us to get candidates genuinely interested in a role if we know that.
From the HR side, like if we're engaging a client, they're not letting us say, "Hey, Rob Ross, go ham." There's guardrails, there's metrics, there's clarity, there's communication all involved in it, and everyone's expectations set properly, ours and the clients. And that's really crucial to have these successful, endeavors in building on it. One of the most unknown but notable is Spotify and Accenture. Spotify, when they were, I guess they're still growing, but in the infancy stages, realized that they needed to figure out how they could outsource their HR function and not just have it be installed software. And they teamed up with Accenture to deliver a people solution that was very unique to their organization. And why we bring it up, or why I'm bringing it up, is it was a true collaboration between the two entities. The one wasn't dictating how it was supposed to be versus the other. They were feeding off of each other to partner and deliver this result that some small and mid-sized businesses can evaluate. And it was done through strategies and an employment experience that Accenture had, because they were able to see and kind of get into a variety of organizations and see what was working, what wasn't working, and then retrofit what did for Spotify. So you get those lessons learned. And that's a good thing with it. The other thing that comes with it, and we've seen it, we've won a lot of business from it, is that consulting team tends to be more agile. How many times did we run into, we need 20 people, we need 5 people, we need 13 people, we need 7 people, we need 50 people. No, we don't need them in California. Now we need them in Maine. And you're like, okay.
And we need a Monday.
We can do that. We don't love doing that. No consulting firm does. But that was a big reason for our success, especially early on. So from a small business perspective, you're trying to grow your organization. And this will be the scenario. You have a plus product. And let's say you know how to market it. So you have some demand coming in. Maybe you're weak operationally. Maybe you're weak on the human capital side. Maybe you're weak on the sales side, or whatever it might be. Where would you go to start trying to figure out how to upscale your business through?
I would go to my network. I would go to other business owners I know and say, hey, how did you solve this problem? What I've seen is that somewhere between 70 and 80% of all businesses let's call it all businesses under 50 million, or more or less the same. You're dealing with all the same issues: HR, payroll, compliance, accounting, marketing, sales, all of it. The different 20 to 30% is just going to be what your specific core competency is. Other than that, I would go to somebody and say, hey, how did you solve this problem? And if you go to a few people, they each have a different provider for whatever the service is, vet them thoroughly, and then just pick one.
You wouldn't check Google or punch in the chat GPT. You would.
Google's the last place I would go. But then again, I don't buy, because Google, those results are based on SEO and who's paying the money for the clicks. The best company out there isn't necessarily the one. And what I've found is the companies that are paying in general, the companies that are paying for those clicks, you're going to end up making up for that in their price, because they're going to charge you more based on how much they're advertising. I would rather find someone organically that I know, that someone I know has had a good experience with, than going to a Google or finding someone on a billboard or a commercial or whatever it is.
Say you're like 90% of the small businesses out there. All right. You have your core competency. Typically, your core competency is selling a product or a service, right? You don't have the accounting background. You don't have the IT background, right? You don't have necessarily an HR compliance background. Where of those, like, where do you start? What do you think is the most crucial thing to have up and running.
When you start your business, you need an
Yeah.
attorney and an accountant.
And then what's the next progression? from
After
there?
that, you need.
But we're not saying the LLC part of it. We're just talking like, hey, my business is going.
Oh, once you're already going? Yeah. I mean, sales, but sales probably you should have in-house. I wouldn't outsource that. But, you know, grow the sales team in-house. And then you would definitely need an outside accountant. You would need an attorney and probably some way of doing marketing, whether you're doing that yourself or you're outsourcing it to.
See, I would take it from, if I had to rank it in priority, it would depend on how technical the person was. And like if you could set up your own like email and stuff through like a GoDaddy or whatnot. But I would go accountant, then either IT or like HR administrative piece of it. Because I'll make an assumption like you, if you're going to build out a sales team, you're going to hire your own sales force. Your warehouse team, you're going to hire that. So someone who could do the benefits administration, the payroll, things of that nature.
I didn't even think about that because that's what we do.
Yeah.
So it's like we did it for ourselves. So yes, you're absolutely right. I would take care of HR. I mean, from the research we were looking at, I think business owners spend around 20 hours a week on HR related tasks. So if you're working 40 hours a week in the business, you're now up to 60 for the time you're spending on the business at least. And that's just for HR and production. And usually the founder of the company is the top salesperson, at least at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
And let's be honest, who wants to run payroll?
right. And compliance and benefit. I mean, and that's when things fall by the wayside where you're like, I just don't have enough time in the day to research all this stuff.
Yep.
Especially if you're operating in multiple states. Like what if you're located in one town and you have employees in another town? Like what are the implications there?
Philadelphia, what do you do?
Jersey or Delaware or Maryland or wherever, or remote employees, that it complicates everything now.
You're correct. From just compiling some of this. So for best practices for small businesses, we have selecting the right vendor, word of mouth, things of that nature, right? But do you set up like a scorecard or any kind of SLAs for them? Like how do you actually rank that, you know, your marketing person did this or your IT person's doing this? Like some things are easier than not. And before I fully, you know, ask you the question, like we looked at having people do market analysis for our company, and the price was very high.
I would say
Absurd. Okay. And there was no metrics tied to that.
it was like 2 to 3% of our gross.
And it was just to provide us with data.
Right.
If we wanted metrics, it was going to be more.
And if we wanted recommendations, it was more. If we wanted implementation, it was more.
Correct. I get that's their business. So I'm not talking anything negatively with it. Some of these firms aren't even enabling you the ability to see an ROI on it. So in those retrospects, like how do you do it? How do you see that? MSP, you can figure out, hey, I get a 20-minute response time to my emails. If I call in, they fix my device or my internet connection right then and there. Like that's easy. But your accountant, how do you measure the success?
You see how many states you get notices from that you didn't pay your bills and they hit you with penalties. I mean, there's really only like, do you enjoy talking to them? Do they take you golfing or out to lunch or whatever? I mean, it really is, do you like them and are they doing a good enough job? And if they're doing both those things, then I say keep them. What's the impact on your business if you have a good accountant versus a great accountant? I don't know if my accountant is the best one out there or in the middle. I have no idea. I hope he's the best one, but I have no way of knowing. As long as they don't mess anything up and you reasonably like them, I think you're good, because there is a cost associated with finding a new one. You know, you got to go and vet them, meetings, proposals, contracts, all of that. It's not like you can just shift over. We switched accountants at one point and it was a big undertaking, and that was just for the accounting.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
accounting's a lot. It's like switching doctors. Like you have to get all the old records and give it to the new one. And, you know, luckily there's no HIPAA forms or anything with accountants, but, you know, it's a big undertaking. So yeah, going into it, I'd say have a very kind of heavier on the screening on the front end and then kind of relaxed as you're working with them. At least that'd be my mindset. But, you know, if you don't pick the right one, you probably should switch.
Sure. And, you know, as you're working with one of these outsourcing partners, having regular meetings with them to assess what they're doing, where your business is going, because your direction might change. And what your needs were a month ago or 2 months ago may not be where they need to be now. So open communication and having those alignment sessions is really, really important. The other thing, as much as the alignment sessions, is the exit strategies. Because if it doesn't work out, how are you exiting? Are you going to owe them any money? Are you going to be penalized from doing things? So as small business, mid-sized businesses are going through these things, make sure you're reading all the fine print. And if something seems not favorable for your organization to essentially break up with this person, there might be a reason why. And that's not saying, hey, you owe me guaranteed money for, you sign a 12-month contract for $100,000 and you're on the hook for it regardless. But there's different ways to do this, right? You should start small. Try doing the one thing that you like the least and getting rid of that off your plate. The thing that's your biggest time consumer, right? Send that out and then slowly go from there. Because if you can get or limit the amount of distractions you have in a daily, weekly, and monthly base to increase your productivity elsewhere, even if you're paying for that time to go, somebody else to do it, it makes sense. The other thing is a lot of times when you partner with organizations who specialize in one specific thing, accounting, HR, IT, you're going to get more than one or two people there. You're almost getting a whole department for your company already. So you could have a 15-person company, hire a CPA firm, and then get 4 people from that CPA firm working on your team. You can hire an IT team through an MSP, and they're just constantly going. They might have 10 people there at all times. Same thing with an HR and outsourcing piece of it. You'll be able you'll have a whole team there, so you're going to be in your compliance. You're not going to have any issues with certain states and things of that nature. So there's a lot of benefit for these small, mid-sized businesses to do this instead of building it in-house. And you're not giving up control. They're still doing it your way, just correctly.
If you're a business owner that won't give up full control, you're never going to scale because you personally are not scalable. Unless you want to do nothing but work like 20 hours a day, when you get to a certain size, you're just going to have to trust other people and delegate to them.
Yep.
You're going to have to. To me, it always comes down to, do I want to buy the 6-pack or do I want to make not beer in my basement? It's really that simple. I don't want to make accounting. It's not going to turn out well and I'm not going to have fun doing it. So I'll outsource it. I don't want to be an attorney. As much as, Rob and I like arguing with each other, I do not want to be an attorney. Just like HR, recruiting, it's most companies not core competency. So find someone else that you trust and let someone else handle it.
Yeah, that's spot on. I mean, that's the takeaway. When you partner with someone that you trust and set the expectations is clearly defined, there's clarity in how it works, a good vendor or a good partner is going to allow you to grow your business exponentially because they're focused on specializing in the area that you're not. And we'll take the recruitment tip of the week and kind of tie it to this. Just because you have an HR department doesn't mean that they're the best recruiter. They might be okay at recruiting or even good at recruiting, but they also have an entirely whole job that they have to do day in and day out. And they could be dealing with employee relations for 3 days straight because there's a whole bunch of unhappy people. So allowing them to partner with an outside organization to do the recruitment or who specializes in IT or some scientific or engineering, skill set that they may not know, will allow your organization to find the right person, and it will help them with help your HR team focus on getting and doing the job.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in today. Just a reminder, growth does not happen by accident. It happens by design. If you enjoyed today's content, please comment, like, and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next time.